All right, let's jump into Who's Eating Good, of course, served by Applebee's here at the Happy Hour Bar. And we start with two Packers. We kick off with Jordan Love, who's got the Bears. Obviously, as Lawrence highlighted, the Bears, unfortunately, not playing for anything except spoiling the Packers' playoff hopes here. For Barry this week, Lawrence, Jordan Love comes in as QB8. Where do you have him, and can he keep a pretty good stretch run going against a defense with the Bears that they've completely figured this thing out since they traded for Montez Sweat?
Yeah, I actually have him at QB6 this week, and they'll be home. So it's very simple for them. They've been rolling. They had Love, he had a little lull in the middle of the season there, but from a totality standpoint, QB5 on the season on a points per game basis. Since Thanksgiving, he's been quarterback 4 on a points per game basis. I don't think many expected this. Like, I had him at quarterback 15 coming in, so that's like a solid quarterback too. But to see him do what he's done, I don't think he's ever had his full arsenal of weapons at one point together this whole season, and he just continues to make it happen. You see here in the game against the Vikings, he's coming into the game with the rookie Jaden Reed as his best playmaker outside of Aaron Jones. But from a receiver standpoint, no Watson, no Wicks. He still goes in there and makes it happen. So the fact that he's getting these wins in crunch time when they have to have them, I expect them to keep eating good and eat right on into the playoffs.
Jay, how do we evaluate someone like Jordan Love going into this offseason where this year he was kind of the fun, okay, he's going to be a first-year starter. You could take him outside the top 12 quarterbacks, like you said, Lawrence, and maybe you have something, and that's in the standard league. But obviously it's going to be a little different for a guy that points per game basis is top 5 right now. I mean, he's at least going to be drafted as a top 10 quarterback and a starting QB1 maybe?
I think so, and I think he has more to offer with his legs as well. We've seen that a little bit. Think back to the New Orleans game in week 2 where he effectively won that game with his rushing ability. But to me, Jordan Love is the weirdest quarterback in the NFL this season. Like, he is, by EPA per play, he's been the 7th best quarterback in the NFL. He's 13th by PFF grade. Statistically, he has been elite. But I just watch Jordan Love in these moments of madness and sometimes where he's just throwing off his back foot. And I don't know, Connor, you'd be a much better evaluator than me. Like, what do you think he is going forward?
I think this is who he is. I think he's somebody that, number one, it's a very, in my opinion, well-designed offense by Matt LaFleur. They understand how to use the tight ends. When I think they've looked totally different when Christian Watson's healthy. Now, that's not a good indicator to lean on as hope for Jordan Love next year, because the reality is in 2 years, Christian Watson's almost never been healthy for a long stretch of time.
Yeah.
But if they go out and they can get another talent at wide receiver or a guy like Jaden Reed, who just set the Packers rookie record for receptions in a single season, if those guys continue to grow, Jordan Love's going to be fine. And like you said, Jay, I think he's a little chaotic. It's just his nature. It's how he was at Utah State. That's why some people were looking at him coming out and they're like, man, this is crazy. And everyone says this now about every quarterback, but that Kyler Mahomes, I'm going to roll out and throw off the back foot and throw on the run. That's how he is, and I think sometimes that brings out the best of him. And in fantasy, you don't really care about a guy making mistakes that way because the highs are so valuable.
Yep. And I think the thing with Love and what tips it and why I think overall people should be pro-Love is that his receiving core has just been decimated this year. He hasn't had Christian Watson. Luke Musgrave's been on IR. He's relying on guys like Jaden Reed, who's a rookie, and Dontavian Wicks, and Romeo Dobbs, who's been up and down. So, and also his offensive line. Like, he hasn't had Bakhtiari all season. So you add all that up. For whatever you think of Jordan Love, and I think earlier in the season I was very low on Jordan Love and then came all the way in, and now it was after the Giants game. But I think that indisputably he's the guy next year, and that was their main, I guess, fact-finding mission for this season.
A lot of the times this season, they would put up his stats next to Aaron Rodgers in their first year as a starter because they both did it the same way. Wait a couple of years, but the difference between the two is Jordan Love here is, he's got a chance to get them into the playoffs this first year, whereas to Aaron Rodgers wasn't so lucky in that sense. But those off-platform, off-the-back-foot throws, it's like you live with that. You look at him against the Vikings, I think 2 of his 3 touchdown passes was off the back foot and just having good ball placement there. So, and you mentioned, Jay, his running ability. He hasn't done that as much this season, but it definitely is something that he did show at Utah State. And perhaps next season when he does, have his full arsenal of weapons, maybe we get that a little bit more. Obviously, quarterbacks tend to run more when it's man coverage.
So we move over one of those weapons in Jaden Reed, who, right now has just been on a great run since he's had to take on a bigger role. Third most fantasy points per game among rookie wide receivers this season, Lawrence, behind Tank Dell and Puka Nacua. If you said that to somebody in August, they would assume Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, whoever it may be. But the reality is Jaden Reed has kind of come out of nowhere for this team, been able to pick up a lot of slack, especially in target share and just the manufactured touches as well.
Yeah, it's a great thing for Green Bay, too, that they're able to get him the ball at every level, even including behind the line of scrimmage, and just let him go to work that way. Over the past 3 weeks, he's averaging 22 fantasy points per game, which is a top 5 receiver. So you love that there. The thing that's helped him out was, Christian Watson being out. It gave him a chance to flourish. One thing to just note here, when Christian Watson does play, when he's active, Jaden Reed only averaged 2.4 fantasy points per game. So that's a thing that going forward we have to look at. But again, like you mentioned earlier, Christian Watson hasn't been healthy for long. But you see here, this is the part of his game that we was kind of questioning. Can he get deep? He could be that guy again, every single level of the field. He's a factor to do damage to the defense. He hit a career high so far in his young career in receiving yards with 89 yards. If he didn't get hurt in that Minnesota game, he would have had himself a day. So yeah, expect if the Green Bay receivers continue to be banged up, expect Jaden Reed, who he was banged up himself. I don't think it's serious, but expect him to keep on eating good right along with his quarterback.
Yep. Connor, when this offense is fully formed next season, which we haven't really seen at all this year, when it's Love behind a fully healthy offensive line, like how do these skill position players fit in between, we talk about Jaden Reed, it's like Debo Light, but how does he fit alongside Watson, Wicks, Dobbs, Musgrave?
I think what's weird to me is Musgrave, to me, is a power slot. Like, he's a tight end that's always should play off the line of scrimmage. He's not a blocker. He's a great straight line speed athlete. But Reed is a guy that is a traditional slot. So I think they'll have to be very creative of how they balance that, because a guy like Watson, even a guy like Wicks, you could ask them to play on the outside. So I think Reed's been so good since Watson's been out, Jay, that he's honestly forced their hand that there has to be a place for him on the field, even when they're fully he'll
Is Dobbs the odd man out?
Yeah, I think so.
And I would say going into next season, it'll be like Dobbs will still be on all these guys will be on the roster because they're all on the young man contract still.
Right. And they get hurt a lot of these guys.
Yeah, right. So, next year when it's time to draft, I expect Jaden Reed to be the first Packers receiver that you take off the board, because with Watson, it's those hamstrings, and you can't really, you can't depend on it. They've actually said during the offseason they're going to, do more research as to why he's having these problems with the hamstrings. So with the way Jaden Reed has been playing and how consistent he's been, I definitely expect him going into 2024, and when it's time to draft, he'll be the first Packers receiver we take.
And not to mention, I know he's been hurt a lot this year, but Aaron Jones expected to be elsewhere next season. It's a lot more opportunity in this offense as well.
That'll be interesting, too, because they would, if he's gone, they need a running back.
Right. You're not just rolling it back with what they have behind him.
You need you need something.
Yep. And you think as well about how the changing complexion of the NFC North. Like next year, all those 4 teams might be really good. If you get Kirk Cousins back in Minnesota, what that offense, how they were rolling with Cousins, they were an elite offense with a really strong offensive line. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, you hope he plays a full season, and a defense commandeered by Brian Flores. And then the Bears, the improvements they've made and all the draft capital that they have. And then the Packers, who are on an upward trajectory, and their defense can only get better. It cannot get worse. And then you have the Lions, who, if the refs make the right call, they're 12-4 right now, and a 2 seed in the NFC. So that division is looking pretty loaded now.
All right, our last player here, James Conner. He's got the Seahawks. He comes in as RB10 for Barry this week, Lawrence. And Conner's been, the classic case of when he's healthy, a great value running back in fantasy this season.
Yeah, it is just not not a flashy name, not a flashy player, but running back 15 on a points per game basis this year. Week 17, 28 rushes for 128 yards and a touchdown. And the Seahawks had the second worst rush defense over the last 4 weeks. So it's like if you're playing fantasy football in week 18, James Conner could easily be a top 10 running back this week. Just because of the players who may or may not play. CMC's already out. We don't know what we'll see from Kyron Williams here. So those type of players being out, that'll bump him up the ranks a little bit. Although it's not as you see him here against the Eagles. You see James Conner here catching a actual touchdown pass. Well, you know why, folks? Because Philly has the worst pass defense in the NFL, and they don't have that great run defense anymore either. So yeah, man, you got one more week of James Conner. He's ate good sometimes, and other times the plate's been bare. But week 18 against a Rams team that's they good to go. I like him this week.
Yeah, and that touchdown reception has to be one of the longest and most impressive 5-yard receptions in NFL history, because Kyler threw that for about 20 yards back. And I think that's the interesting thing with Conner, because with him, it's always been, he's going to get the rushing volume, he's good. It's one, does Kyler vulture him around the goal line? And then two, what can he actually add in the receiving game? Because he's had multiple games this year of just 0 targets and multiple games of 0 receptions, but he's also had games of 5 receptions. So is that something they can add into the offense going forward if he's going to be around there?
And a correction, he's actually RB4 for Barry this week. So big expectations for Week 18, as Lawrence mentioned, against a struggling Seahawks run defense.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.